In the last 5 years, I've personally pitched over 500 landlords and turned that into over 50 properties, making over $150,000 a month. Now, I didn't start closing consistently until I figured out what actually mattered in that conversation, because most of what I thought mattered actually didn't. So I'm going to be sharing my top 26 lessons from over 500 landlord pitches to actually avoid the mistakes that I made to begin with. Lesson 1, the second you walk into that unit to talk to the landlord, remember that you are not a salesperson. You're there to explain the business model, not there to actually close a sale. So this is where a lot of people tend to go wrong. They tour properties, or they pitch over the phone, super salesy, they're trying to close the deal. And honestly, it just doesn't work that way. You're more so of explaining the business model in person, right? Just elaborating on how we actually operate a corporate housing company, the people that we serve, how we furnish the property, and the actual side of growing the corporate housing business on its own. Now, I say this is where a lot of people go wrong when they first start pitching, because landlords are going to be able to feel you trying to hard close them. And the best way to land these deals is they want to feel how confident you are in the business model, right? They're going to be able to feel that tension if you maybe aren't confident in your pitch, or maybe they can't trust you. Some people feel like when they're in the sales process, they kind of shy away from certain things to talk about, or they put up curtains just because they don't want to be sold. And it's just something we want to avoid. So the best way to go into these tours is pitching them in person, of course, but also just explain the business model rather than trying to sell them. A lot of landlords and property management groups, if they trust you, they're going to be willing to bet on you. And that's exactly how I landed my first deal. Right? I spoke about this before. My first ever property that I closed, I actually went to go tour with my father, and I was a young kid. I was in my early 20s, and because I was confident in my pitch and I was just explaining the business model, he knew I was family oriented. I had my dad with me, right? He was willing to place a bet on me, knowing that I was a young kid looking to hustle and I would find a way to make it work regardless. So lesson 1, you are not a salesperson in that room. You're explaining a business model, not closing a sale. Lesson 2, every pitch has to be built around solving the landlord's problems, not your own goals. So the second lesson is super important, because a lot of people, when they first land their first deal, or try and land their second deal, they think of, oh wow, I'm going from 1 property to 2 property, or 3 properties to 5, and they start to see they're going to make more money, right? Getting closer to their own goals, right? But that's the quite opposite that we want to do here. The biggest power here on how we get landlords to say yes to us and work with us for long term is provide value and bring that to the table for them. Meaning, we need to provide solutions to their problems. And we've spoken about this before, right? On why even landlords allow us to arbitrage your units or apartment complexes. Well, they deal with high vacancy, a lot of tenant turnover. So when we're pitching these people and we're touring these properties, if we highlight the problems that these people have on a yearly basis and tell them how we're going to solve them, your success rate on closing these deals is just going to be astronomical, because they're realizing, oh wow, this person is going to bring a lot of value to me. They're going to allow me to continue getting to my goals, and they're going to find a reason to get you in the door no matter what. So lesson 2, build the pitch around their problems, not your goals. Lesson 3, confidence matters more than experience, and landlords respond to drive even from a total beginner. I've seen it time and time again. A shaky first timer with 0 deals actually wins the rooms and gets more deals across the line. The reason behind this is you need to have confidence behind your pitch. And now, a lot of the times when we're pitching these deals, especially if you have no deals, we have to be upfront with them, and we just tell them we're a startup, right? Honestly, a lot of people shy away from doing that. They try and lie and say, oh, I've had 5 properties, or I have 10 properties already. But honestly, they're going to be able to read right through that energy if it's not true. Okay. I like to be very straightforward with my relationships, my partnerships. When I first started, I told everyone I was a startup. Like, this is going to be my first property. But because I had confidence behind my pitch, right, and had certainty that I was going to make it work, they were able to feed off that. And they were able to understand, okay, wow, again, I'm going to be able to place a bet on this kid because I know that they're going to get this done. Now, landlords aren't grading your resume, they're reading your energy. Okay. So it's the most important thing. And that's what's going to increase the probability of you closing more deals. So lesson 3, confidence beats experience, and drive is going to get you further than a resume ever will. Lesson 4, nerves on your first few tours are completely normal. Almost everyone shows up to their first tour shaking, and maybe even the following 5 or 10 tours after that. And it's totally normal. Okay. It's actually a sign that you're moving in the right direction. You're a little bit uncomfortable. You've never done this before. So you're not going to have that 100% confidence of like pitching because it's your first time. That's normal. And the last thing they want to see is like, just because you're nervous and you tell yourself you're not cut out for this. Do not feel that way. Okay. This is normal, especially your first couple tours. It's going to happen. You're going to be nervous. As long as, hey, you have good personality, you're really able to connect with the person that's giving you the tour of the property. That is the most important thing, alongside just the confidence in your pitch. So lesson 4, the nerves don't mean you're not ready. They mean you're about to grow. Lesson 5, your first deal is a long-term business relationship, not a one-time transaction. Listen, it's tempting to treat the signed lease as a finish line, and you don't want to be that person. Okay. Landlords who feel like this is just a transactional thing are the landlords who don't renew leases. So I want you to look at the big picture. Look at it from a 1,000-foot overview. This first lease that you sign with your first landlord, your first apartment complex, or property management group is going to allow you to open many, many more doors down the road. Okay. This is a relationship thing that you're building. When you meet these landlords and you meet these new partnerships that you're building, that's going to give you more opportunities to continue scaling. So you want to be able to nurture these relationships. And I've seen a ton of people go wrong. They just sign a lease and they don't talk to the landlords. They don't keep that personal relationship and connection with them. It ends up biting them in the butt later on down the road. So the real value shows up months later, not on signing day. So lesson 5, you're not closing a deal, you're opening a relationship. Lesson 6, leading with Airbnb kills the pitch before it starts. So lead with the business model instead. The word Airbnb triggers instant fear about parties, damage, turnover, right? In a lot of landlords or apartment complexes' minds. So the last thing you want to do is when you're pitching these people is coming out and saying, oh, we're an Airbnb company. We're going to put the property up on Airbnb, or this is going to be a short-term rental, right? We kind of want to stay away from those words. It's not that we're lying that we're not going to use Airbnb, but like, it's not even true. We're not an Airbnb company. We're a corporate housing company, and we use Airbnb to market the property. Honestly, that's only one marketing platform that we use, right? We connect with insurance groups, we connect with hospitals, we connect with people on Furnish Finder, right? We use VRBO, Booking.com. All these different marketing channels is just a way to get the property out to these target audiences to increase bookings, right? So we never want to lead with saying we're an Airbnb company just because it triggers that fear instantly. It's just a conception that a lot of people have around Airbnb. And for some properties, it's true, right? Vacationals, and if you're not attracting the right demographic, yes, you're going to have parties. And that's exactly why we don't serve vacationers. We serve corporate professionals, right? So we want to be very clear on that in the front end. And you just want to go ahead and lead with how we talked about before. We're never leading with we're an Airbnb company. It's always we're a corporate housing company. So lesson 6, don't say Airbnb, say corporate housing company. Lesson 7, ask if they allow corporate leases before anything else, because it's going to tell you in seconds if it's a viable deal. No matter how good your pitch is, if they do not allow corporate leases or aren't at least open to them, then landlords are just going to say no to you, because the difference between a normal lease and a corporate lease is we're able to put our business name on the lease itself. We're never here to put our personal name on these leases. This is a business. We do not want to attach our personal name to it. It's always our LLC. So immediately, before you even go to tour the property, you need to make sure that they allow corporate leases or that they're at least open to that. And it will save you a lot of time just funneling through the lead list that you have built out. And one quick question filters the entire list down to real opportunities. So lesson 7, ask about corporate leases first. It's going to save you hours. Lesson 8, explain the business model as a corporate housing company, not a short-term rental operator. Now, again, we spoke about this briefly before, but it just sounds way, way better as we're a corporate housing company compared to short-term rental or an Airbnb company. It's way more professional. And in fact, it's more legitimate. That's exactly what we are. Again, we use multiple different marketing channels. We are a corporate housing company serving corporate professionals. Okay. We're not an Airbnb company. It's the best way to lead with these terms, right? We don't want to say we're an Airbnb company because that's not true. So same business, but the framing decides whether they say yes. So lesson 8, you're running a corporate housing company. So say it that way. Lesson 9, put the business name on the lease, never your personal name. When you put your personal name on lease, guys, it ties every risk directly back to you. So we're always putting business names on these leases that we're signing. They're corporate leases. So we're always going to put the LLC on there, not our personal name. To be frank with you guys, if you are putting your personal name on leases, it makes the operation and actual company look smaller and less serious that it is. So it's more professional, and a business name signals a real company that the landlord is actually doing business with. So lesson 9, your business signs the lease, not you. Lesson 10, speak to the landlord's real goals, which is to grow their portfolio and lock in consistent rent. Bottom line, to get a lot of these deals across the line, you have to make the landlords realize that this is a no-brainer for them, right? So we're really highlighting their goals and allowing them to achieve those things, whether it's buying more properties, buying more apartment complexes, because they're getting consistent rent from their tenants, aka us. Okay, so mainly we need to highlight their goals and understand where are they trying to take their company to. So speaking to their actual goal makes you sound like a real partner, not a stranger. And that's exactly what this is. This is a partnership. We're here to help each other win. They understand that we're making more money than they're asking for in rent per month. We're providing massive solutions to their problems, which is paying consistent rent every single month, allowing them to buy more properties because they're able to pay their mortgage, right, and profit what they're asking for. And we're allowing them to maybe even cut out property managers because we're managing the entire property for them. Now, these are the biggest values that we bring to these landlords on top of having less tenant turnover, right? We could sign multiple year leases with these landlords and apartment complexes, and the stronger that we grow these relationships with, they just get easier down the road. So lesson 10, talk about their portfolio, not your plans. Lesson 11, present the deal as removing their biggest headache, which is finding and keeping quality tenants. Every landlord has a story about a bad tenant or a long vacancy, and it's very common with landlords and apartment complexes. That's exactly what we're here to do, right? We're here to resolve those issues. That pain in their mind is way bigger than the extra rent that you're offering, okay? So when we come to their position, we come to the table and we say, hey, you're not gonna have to worry about tenants squatting in your properties, paying rent late, right? Or even destroying your place. We're gonna go ahead and take care of all of that for you. We're gonna have really good tenants come in here and stay that are traveling for a short term, whether it's for their work, whether it's for a conference, and we're gonna go ahead and have a professional cleaning team come into these properties monthly to make sure that this is staying in tip-top shape. So again, we're providing massive solutions to these people, and that's exactly what we want to do, and really just mitigate the headaches that they have naturally as landlords. So lesson 11, you're not offering rent, you're offering relief. Lesson 12, never bring up screening or background check questions before they ask. That's a completely separate conversation. Bringing up screening early plants a doubt in their minds that really wasn't even there yet. And when people ask for screening or background checks, it's a pretty big objection that I help a lot of my students overcome, and it's very common, but we never want to bring that up if it's not brought up from them directly. So it really shifts the conversation from opportunity to risk manage it. So let the landlord ask you about screening only if they're already worried about it. So lesson 12, don't answer questions that nobody's asked yet. Lesson 13, in-person tours convert dramatically better than phone pitches. We talk a lot about building relationships, having confidence, and really using your personality to land these deals. So when you're calling these landlords, it really gives them every excuse to just say no to you really fast. So when you're in person, they're gonna feel your professionalism, right? They're gonna see how driven that you are. They're gonna feel your personality, and they're gonna be open to hearing your pitch more. Another thing that I want you guys to realize too is when you're actually standing in the unit with the landlord or with the property manager, it makes it feel more real, not hypothetical, right? When you're over the phone and you're cold calling and you're trying to pitch these people over the phone, it's just like anyone else. I don't know about you guys, but if you get a random call from a random number, well, typically like, oh, what does this person want? It's just a natural way of how people will come off with cold calls. You just have a way better chance of landing these deals in person rather than over phone. So lesson 13, get off the phone and meet the landlords in person. Lesson 14, tour the property like a business partner, not a customer. A customer walks through pointing out flaws and asking for concessions, but a partner walks through that unit already thinking about how they're gonna make it work, what they're gonna do to fix it, what they're gonna do to make it look nicer. Now, we are going after turnkey properties. They gotta be rent ready, but if there's little issues that we can resolve, I'm not gonna tour a property and point out all the flaws. Like, as long as it's livable and there's things that, whether it's my handyman, my cleaners, or myself can fix, I'm just gonna go ahead and go with it, right? As long as it's in livable condition, that's all I care about, because we've already ran the numbers. We know it's gonna be profitable. It's in a good location. I'm not gonna start pointing out all these different flaws. It's gonna make them feel like, wow, maybe they are a normal tenant compared to a business partner. And that's the exact opposite that we want. So that shift entirely is gonna change how the landlord is gonna see you instantly. So lesson 14, walk it like you already own a piece of it. Lesson 15, your first handful of tours will feel disorganized, and that's all part of the process. Early tours are rarely gonna go the way that you rehearse them. When you realize that this is a numbers game and you just know that you wanna just continue pitching, and talk to as many landlords as possible, that's what's going to build that confidence. It's not gonna come right out of the gate, guys. And for me, a quick story, when I first started pitching landlords, what I was actually doing is I was writing my pitch down on the mirror in my room. So every time I walked in my room, whether it was 5, 6, 7 times a day, I would immediately read the script off the mirror while looking at myself. This allowed me to rehearse and actually build some confidence and momentum through these words, and just rehearsing as if I was touring a property and speaking to a landlord. So that was able to allow me to speed ramp that process of building that confidence and certainty, but it's gonna take time, right? Your first 5, 10, maybe even 15 tours aren't gonna go the way that you rehearse it, and that's totally fine. This is a numbers game. The more people you speak to, the better that your pitch is going to get and allow you to close more deals. So lesson 15, if your first few tours feel messy, that's just part of the process. Lesson 16, the 2 biggest risks in this business are the wrong market and the wrong property, not the landlord conversation. A lot of new operators spend most of their time and anxiety on what they're actually gonna say to the landlord, how that pitch is gonna go. As we just spoke, this is a numbers game. Confidence is gonna come with more repetitions that you have. The conversation is actually the easiest part to get right with practice. So first things first, the market and the property are what actually make or break the business. So that's where a lot of the time, focus, and energy and constraints should be, and maybe a little bit of the anxiety, rather than pitching in person and feeling anxious and not as confident as you can be. That'll come with reps like we just spoke about. So lesson 16, worry about the market and the property. The conversation will take care of itself. Lesson 17, choose markets with clear regulation over markets with none. Unregulated markets can change overnight. No regulation feels like freedom when you're first getting started. So you want to go into markets that have really clear regulation, like short-term rental permits or licensing that we can apply for and just pay and get done with, rather than going to markets that have very strict regulation, like 30-day stay minimums, or markets that have no regulation at all, because who knows, the state, the city can just flip a switch and just ban Airbnbs, ban short-term rentals, and that's not something we want to deal with. If that does happen, we're always protected through our lease addendums, but it's something that we can avoid from day one when doing our market research, of just avoiding those markets as plain. So clear regulations means you know exactly what properties to go after in what zoning, and you're going to be clear from the start and not worry about any fines, fees, or headaches down the road. So lesson 17, rules you could read beat rules that don't exist yet. Lesson 18, apartment complexes scale faster than individual landlords, and one relationship can unlock dozens thousands of doors. I'm not saying that you cannot scale quick with landlords. It's very possible because a lot of these landlords usually own multiple properties, or maybe they even own apartment complexes, multifamily apartment units. But apartment complex usually have more vacancy, so they usually have more properties and apartments available to offer to you at a quicker rate. So if you only land one relationship with an apartment complex, that conversation can open 10 or even 20 doors at once. First, of course, you have to show them that you're a good operator and you're taking care of their first few properties they're giving to you. But later, months down the line, it's going to open way more doors much faster than landlords. Now, I want to throw this into because it is important to diversify. You want to have relationships with apartment complexes. You want to have relationships with landlords as well. But to begin with, if you are trying to scale super fast, a lot of the times apartments are the way to go. So lesson 18, one great relationship with an apartment complex can do the work of 20 landlords. Lesson 19, managing 5 landlord relationships is harder than managing one complex with the same door count. If you have 5 landlords, that means 5 different personalities, expectations, and problems. When working with apartment complexes, that means one point of contact for the same number of doors. Again, both have their pros and cons. Landlords are really good to work with alongside of apartment complexes, but there are a lot of pros working with these complexes. So when you do have these relationships with apartment complexes, you have fewer relationships to deal with, right? Less expectations, and it means that you're actually spending more time on scaling the business than worrying about managing people. So lesson 19, fewer relationships, same doors, and way less of a headache. Lesson 20, 0% interest business credit cards can fund your first units without even touching your personal savings, but it's a tool, not a strategy. I have all of my students, and including myself when I first got started, to leverage these 0% interest business credit cards. Even if you have the capital liquid in your savings or your checking, it's always good to use OPM, right? Other people's money. So leveraging the bank's money is going to increase your chances of scaling the business much, much faster because they're essentially giving you a 12-month loan, meaning you don't have to pay that loan back fully and you're not going to incur interest. So you just make the minimum payment on these business credit cards every single month with the profit of the Airbnb property. And then come 12 months from now or from then, you have multiple Airbnbs cash flowing, you pay the card off in full. So it's really easy to lean on. And then maybe your third, fourth, fifth property start touching your liquid capital. So instead of you only having 2 or 3 units, well, now you have 5 or 6, right? Because you leverage OPM and you also use your working capital as well. So both have their pros and cons, but to begin with, it's really good as long as you have good personal credit score to leverage the bank's money because it's going to allow you to scale faster. So lesson 20, use the credit to move, don't build your business on it. Lesson 21, landlords rarely are going to raise your rent once you're a proven multi-unit operator. Losing you is going to cost them more than keeping the rate. This is a really good lesson to learn because to begin with, yes, a new landlord is going to have the leverage on you from day one, but once you're leasing multiple properties from landlords or apartment complexes, well, it's essentially you giving them rent for multiple properties and you're essentially the only tenant. Compared to if they had their other 5 properties to 5 tenants, they're worrying about 5 different people paying them rent. But when it's us, they're just worrying about one person. So we're able to stand on a leg with more properties that we rent from them. So later down the road, we can start negotiating, maybe getting our security deposit back, or maybe signing a multi-year lease or having rent actually lowered. Because if they do turn around to you, let's say 2 years, 3 years later, and you're subleasing 7, 10, 15 of their properties, that means they're going to have to find X amount of tenants to occupy all those units. So once you do become a reliable operator, it's going to cost them more than any rent increase would actually gain for them. So lesson 21, become the tenant that they're afraid to lose. Lesson 22, occupying a meaningful share of a building is going to give you the real negotiating leverage you need. So going off of what we talked a little bit about before, one unit in a building gives you almost no say in anything, but when you have a ton of properties or a ton of apartments in one complex, that changes how seriously they can actually take you. So that leverage is going to show up the next time that you want better terms, whether it's negotiating security deposit, negotiating the actual rent price. It's really big. So in the begin with, that's not something you want to put your time, focus, and energy into of negotiating that stuff because you don't really have anything to stand on. But later on down the road, the more properties you take, you're going to be able to negotiate those things because you have more leverage. So lesson 22, more doors is going to mean more leverage. Lesson 23, consistency over time is what turns a first yes into an ongoing relationship. Your first yes only proves that you can actually get in the door, but what keeps you in the building is doing the same thing well month after month, even year after year. These landlords, these apartment complexes, even property management groups or companies, they're going to remember reliability far more than actually remembering how good your first pitch pitch was. Okay, so when you're able to continue to maintain these relationships, continue to nurture, continue to reach out, see how you can help them. Is there anything you can do to continue providing value to the table? They're going to feel that. They're going to be way more willing to give you more properties and continue helping you out. So lesson 23, show up the same way every single month, every single year. That's what's going to earn the next building or even the next apartment. Lesson 24, a track record with one landlord or two landlords becomes easier to open up more doors down the road, whether it's future buildings or future deals. Once you land your first couple deals, the next thing that you're looking at is scaling. And the easiest way to continue scaling is using your past relationships to vouch for you. So the more relationships you have, your landlords or apartment complexes, you can kind of leverage those people if you have really good and close relationships with to vouch for you with future landlords or to get future deals across the line and for them to vouch for you and say, hey, we've been working with X company and they've been doing a really good job. They pay rent every single month. They take care of the property. It's going to allow you to close more deals moving forward. So lesson 24, let your results talk to the next landlord before you do. Lesson 25, the goal isn't one property. It's becoming the operator a landlord doesn't want to lose. So it's easy to treat every single deal as the finish line, but the real win is being the operator that these landlords, apartment complex don't want to replace. That means that you're providing consistent value over and over again. That reputation is what's going to keep opening new deals, more doors down the road, and even more relationships with other buildings. So the more value that you provide to these landlords, the less that they're going to want to replace you, the more deals that they're going to feed you, and the more leases that you're going to renew. So lesson 25, aim to be irreplaceable, not just to be approved. Lesson 26, every no builds you experience for the next landlord that you approach. We've talked a lot about this is a numbers game, and every time that you get no, it may feel like this is proof that this isn't going to work, but it's not the case. Every time that you get a no, it's going to sharpen exactly what you need to say on your next pitch or your next relationship that you're trying to build. So by the time that yes comes around and that first deal gets across the line, you've already rehearsed it dozens of times to where your pitch is very confident, you're very certain behind your words, and that's just going to allow you to close more deals, long story short. So lesson 26, every no is just practice for the yes that's coming up. Now, these 26 lessons will get your foot in the door, but if your operational systems aren't locked in, you're gonna hit a wall fast. Instead of trying to piece it all together yourself, click on this video right here. It's a live, unedited call where you can listen in on our actual clients troubleshooting their setups, going over their real numbers, and launching their properties. It'll show you exactly how we do this in the real world.